Hello again. We're back, Music 47, for another tutorial video. I'll be going through some patch ideas for the East Coast Synthesis assignment that you should be working on now. We're gonna jump right into it and talk about the patch that I have going on right now. There's two voices being controlled in this patch. One which is a performative voice controlled entirely with my computer keyboard. That means that no sound is going to happen unless I tell it to with my MIDI CV interface here. And then also another voice which is controlled by a sequencer, and that I can automate the production of notes with. We're going to use these two basic elements in our patch today and in making this piece, as well as a few other techniques that we talked about for creating that atemporal or arrhythmic section, which for our piece we've decided is going to be kind of an intro sort of section. So let's jump right in and explore this first voice, which I have down here. I know there's quite a bit of patch spaghetti going on right now, but just bear with me and I'll walk you through it. So if we zoom in here, you can see some familiar faces of our basic subtractive synthesizer voice. So we've got our VCO here with a square wave output that's heading into a VCF, or a voltage controlled filter. And the note shape is being controlled by an attack, decay, sustain, release envelope generator, which is going into this voltage controlled amplifier here. So you'll see that my signal chain goes from my square wave output into my filter, from my low pass output of the filter into the VCA, and then the control input of the VCA being controlled by that ADSR envelope generator, and being sent out to a main mixer that I have right here, which I'm mixing two voices together with. We'll talk about this other voice here in a second. Now I'm controlling this voice with a MIDI CV controller using my computer keyboard. So similar to the way that the Moog synthesizer was working with keyboard controller input, we're kind of inhabiting that zone and using our computer keyboards to give us access to 12-tone equal divisions of the octave. So I have it set up right now in polyphonic mode, which, just as a reminder, you can right click here on any module that is polyphonic, which you can check in this info tab here. You can see that there's a tag down here, polyphonic module, and most of the VCV core modules are polyphonic enabled. So how I'll make this patch polyphonic is I'll go to my MIDI CV module here, and I'll right click and go down to polyphony channels, and I can set however many channels I want. Right now I have 4. That's all I'll need for creating some simple chords here. At baseline, your module will be in monophonic mode, and if I were to click this, you would see these more translucent and thicker patch cables start to, they would snap down to these thinner style here, these monophonic chords. And in VCV Rec, we call these polyphonic patch cables. So you can tell when a patch is set into polyphonic mode by these polyphonic patch cables. Now, VCV is very smart. So since I've connected this polyphonic module to these other modules, which are capable of doing polyphonic stuff, it means multiple notes at the same time, it'll automatically make all the rest of the modules have these polyphonic patch cables and be able to send multiple lines. So the final part of this voice here that we have is actually going, like I said, up to this sub mixer here, this VCA mix, and I'm taking that channel and duplicating it into 2 delays, which is one of the effects that we started to talk about. And what this is going to do is it's going to allow me to have a stereo signal that has 2 different delay lines on it to get some kind of variation and difference in our left and right channel using these delays, and we'll talk about what that sounds like in a second. Okay, so let's hear what we've got going on here just now as I go ahead and start pressing some keys on the keyboard. So you can see as I play this little C minor triad here that a lot of our sound sculpting is coming from this filter. And there's a few things that we're doing to manipulate this filter, and we're actually doing it in both voices that we'll see today. First is a trick that I've been using in most of our patches so far, which is to take the envelope of our note shape ADSR and use that to control our cutoff. And that's going to change this filter knob with the envelope shape that we have. So you can hear that as that note comes on with that slow attack that you see here, the filter actually opens up with that kind of wub sound. Another thing to note over here in this VCA is that now that we're working in polyphonic mode, you can actually see these independent 4 note channels show up as I start to play some notes. So that's all well and good. So in addition to actually using this envelope, what I'm doing is I'm taking this CV signal into this handy little module, which we're going to see all over the place today, the mix module. And this is just going to give a unity mix. That means it's going to just mix equal parts of whatever you put into these inputs and send it out the output. So right now, in addition to this envelope that I have sending in, I have an LFO that is going fairly slow and sending the sine wave output into a VCA to attenuate that signal a little bit so that there's a little bit less change as that LFO shape goes up and down, and sending that out into the mix. So what that's going to do is it's going to both change the filter setting with my note shape, but also give me some variation over time, so that if I'm just holding out a long chord, there's still some change happening, and we can hear that now. You can hear those higher harmonics start to kind of come out and wave in the sound. It's subtle, but it adds some nice shape to this voice that I like a lot. In addition to that, we have another LFO that's slowly modulating the resonance here, which we have turned up fairly high. And that's just going to accentuate some of those harmonic effects at a slightly faster pulse. I've also upped the drive a little bit just to increase our volume of the final output stage. So that's the basic voice there. We've got, of course, these different delays, so we can get some different things in our left and right channel. Kind of creates a nice stereo space, which I think adds some depth to the sound there. So we are going to record 2 voices today, actually at the same time. So this performative voice that we just talked about and the sequenced voice that I'll get to in a second are both going into this main mixer that I talked about, right? And what I'm doing with this mixer is it's going to allow me to control the volume of each of those voices. But instead of just going out of our mix output here and recording all of that together, the main mix, I'm keeping things a little separate. So the first thing that I'm doing is I'm taking each of these channels and I'm creating a stereo space. So our sequenced voice here on channel 1 is going into both this mix and this mix module, right? Which is going to stand for our left and our right channels. And down here we have our output of our delays going into either or of the mixes to give that sort of left and right difference to that voice while keeping the sequenced voice centered in the middle because it has equal sort of energy in both channels. So these two left and right mixes are going out to a stereo FX reverb, which is what we're listening to. But Note that there's something a little special going on here, that we are actually not recording out of this reverb. And that's because I want to hear what it sounds like, because I expect to have reverb on my final track, but we're actually going to explore adding that reverb in Audacity, because I think the reverb option there is slightly better. Your mileage may vary, of course. You can always record straight from this, but this is the way that I'm doing it today. So note that we are listening here on our audio module, and we actually have two record modules here. So this one is going to be for our left channel, and that's just going to be a mono signal. And this one is actually going to record stereo from our little performance voice. So this is going to allow us to perform with both of these voices at the same time and generate some material that goes together, and then track it independently so that we can take those separate recordings and manipulate them more specifically in Audacity. Okay, so enough about the mixing there. We've got our performative voice, and let's talk about our sequenced voice. So the sequenced voice that we have going here is very similar to the way that we've set up our sequencer counterpoint video in that last tutorial that I did. We have a similar voice happening here with a saw wave output going into a low pass filter, and then being controlled, its note shape being controlled by this ADSR generator here. Now, instead of performing these notes in, we have them controlled by these two sequencers down here. So this is a low mass gate sequencer, which I like because it gives me more than 8 steps of gate sequencing that this sequencer 3 has, but you might just use your trigger output on your sequencer 3 to get these gates firing along. And of course we have our friend the Count Modula gate modifier here to lengthen those gates a little bit so that we can get some slower attack times, and you really use the full range of our ADSR. Okay, so this sequencer, the main clock sort of our sequence, which is sending gates from this gate sequencer, we have them connected here. And I also have my reset connected here so that I can put them back to space 1. And these things are also controlling both the pitch of this oscillator voice, as well as a few parameters on my envelope here, notably my sustain and my release, giving a little bit of sequenced parameters to those, which will add some kind of inner dynamic changes and rhythm inside of your sequence. So you'll see I've changed some values here to affect those, and they're both being affected equally. Over here on CV1 and 2 of my sequencer 3, I am going into a sequential switch, which is being clocked at step 1 to give me a 16-step sequence of pitches. Now, we're doing something somewhat similar to what we were doing with our filter on that other voice and that we're doing up here, using 2 CV sources and mixing them to create kind of a more complex change. This sequence of 16 values is going into an octave shifter to allow me to shift that sequence up and down in octaves, and then to a quantizer to quantize those pitches within the octave to whatever notes I have set. Here I have just a C minor scale set. And finally, this is going out to my little mixer here. Now, mixed with this quantized sequence is another MIDI CV module, and this one's not in polyphonic mode, but what this is going to allow me to do is take whatever sequence this is sending, whatever sort of list of note values that it's going to send out to control my oscillator pitch here, and it's going to be able to shift them up in musically related intervals, so I can have that same sequence play except maybe a fifth above it. And this is a super common technique for sequencers, kind of shifting the whole sequence up in different pitch relationships to kind of get a lot of variation out of just one sequence. So let's hear what this voice sounds like. I'm gonna turn this up here, and I'll go ahead and just click run. And so here, of course, we have a lot of filter stuff going on here, right? A lot of room here to move things around. We're not affecting the resonance here. I just like to keep a nice bass sound. And in our final chain, we also have another delay here, just for fun. Now this delay is being controlled, or it's being clocked along with our sequencer to give us sort of rhythmic echoes, and we can hear what this sounds like here. Okay, so that's this voice, and we can start to hear those voices together as well. Now, note that something interesting is going to happen because I have both of these MIDI to CV modules set up to receive from the same computer keyboard. So obviously, I have this voice here, and if I just turn down this guy, we can see how this operates when I change the note. So I'm just on a C now, and then I can just go up the scale here. So you can kind of hear how that same pitch sequence kind of moves up its starting position as these two CV values are mixed. Now, because I have two of these things going at the same time, when I play with both of them, an interesting kind of pitch is going to happen. So the last four notes that I play, because this is polyphonic, are going to come out of this voice. But whatever the last note that I've played is, which is what this is going to be receiving as its value, is going to be where my sequencer is. So this means that I can play both of these voices together, and as long as I am kind of crafty as to where I put my last note of my chord, I can move the accompaniment line around with this kind of chordal synthesizer line that's above it. So let's hear that. So what I'm doing there is I'm just kind of rolling my fingers sort of along the keys, making sure that wherever I want that sequencer to end up is the last note that I play when I play a new chord. And this can create some happy accidents, and that's okay too. You don't really need to know about music theory necessarily to do this assignment. Just have fun. If you're stressed for what you should be thinking of, try just taking 3 notes and really making a phrase out of those. So here, for example, I could just take F, which on the computer keyboard is V, and I could, let's raise the, just so we can hear that, and then we could go to E flat, which is D on the computer keyboard, and then down to Z. And if I like how those notes sound, kind of ending on C, then I could make a whole musical phrase out of that. So, we're almost ready to go ahead and make our recording. I'll just turn that off and click reset so that we can be back on our zone here, and talk about this one final thing. So, the one of the main stipulations about this assignment is that there's both a pulse-driven or rhythmic section as well as a non-pulse or arrhythmic section. So one of the ways we talked about in class about how to make a sequencer line not have such a clear pulse is to actually use another sequencer or some CV value to kind of erratically change the tempo of that sequencer. And that's exactly what we're doing down here. So I have another sequencer 3 going into a sequential switch set up in a similar way to this one, except with 3 inputs to create a 24-step sequence. And this is going out to the tempo of my main sequencer here. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to create kind of a textural sort of effect that is not very rhythmic and is very kind of all over the place and complex in its sort of time relationships to create a kind of amorphous sort of intro atmosphere sort of thing using a lot of delay. You'll note that because I'm controlling my delay with a clock signal, that as I change this tempo, we're going to get some really strange effects with the delay. So let's just reset this again and bring this up. Now, you don't have to use a lot here on the tempo CV. Making it subtle is, in my taste, a little better. But let's just hear what this sounds like having some tempo changes from the sequencer. So there's kind of this interesting, effect going on here. Kind of all over the place, sort of erratic behavior. And I can mess with some of my delay settings even more if I want to. I could even automate maybe this time value with one of these. And what I'll do is I'll use this to create some just crazy intro stuff. Now my delays over here on my other voice are also being controlled by the clock, so we can get some weird sounds playing that too. Let's try that out. Great, so just like we talked about in class, we're going to basically use the addition and subtraction of this crazy tempo control to move from an arrhythmic section to a rhythmic section smoothly in our piece. So what I'm going to do now, we have everything set up to record both of these pieces individually, both of these voices individually, and I'm going to just create a gesture where I use this octave shifter to keep this voice really high and slowly shift it down as I kind of play some gestural things over here and move this sequencer around in the process. And then once I get down to my down 2 octaves shift that I want my bass line at, I'll start to reduce this tempo value in order to make a more sort of rhythmic or pulse driven type of piece. And from there I'll keep playing some chords with my performative line and try to find an ending somewhere around 2 minutes in total. So let's do it. So just remember in multi-tracking, you're going to want to click both of these and you'll get a little menu up here and you can type in, we'll say this is sequenced voice East Coast. So everything I record here will be called sequenced voice East Coast, and then here I'll open up another menu and we'll say performed voice East Coast. Great, and we're ready to go. So I'm gonna try to rock it a little bit. Let's see how it goes. Okay, so we just did a little recording of our two voices here, but I think I'm going to add one more thing. I want to take this performance voice that we have here and maybe create some melodies or some sort of top line material that we can put over what we just recorded. So in order to do this, since we're recording both of these lines separately, I'm going to still listen to this line, but I'm actually going to take the keyboard control off. And this is basically just so that I can record something that's going to be in the same tempo as the thing that we just recorded, which our sequencer is still running at the same BPM. And then, also just kind of have a little bit of taste of what is going on in our ear as some inspiration. So we'll get this running again. And remember, we're just going to record this voice. So right now I'm just going to kind of mess around with some simple melodic ideas, and then once I have something that I think, kind of sounds nice, we'll record it. So let's go ahead and change our envelope shape a little bit as well, so that we can kind of differentiate this sound between the other one. We're going to bring that sustain up so it's nice and present. Maybe take the resonance down a little bit. Play with some of these settings. Feels good. Yeah, how about something like that? Something kind of ringy. but you know, it works. So when you're messing around like this, of course, you know, you could sort of fool around and find something you really like and then record it. But sometimes, you know, you find happy accidents that you just play it and you're like, man, I really wish that I had recorded that. So always good to just go ahead and turn this on. Let's make some cheesy melodies. Alright, so that was a bunch of junk, but I'm sure there's something useful in there enough. So we'll go ahead and stop that, and we can stop our pattern here, and I'll meet you over in Audacity, and we'll see what we can do with what we made. Thanks. Okay, we are back. We're in Audacity, and I've just imported into a new file, or a new project rather, both the sequenced voice that I recorded alongside the performed voice. And I also imported the little collection of melodies that we did sort of at the end there. So our first thing is to line up the performance that we did with these two tracks, because we know that we didn't press that record button at the exact same time. There's ways to do that, but I'm a fool, so we didn't do it. And we're gonna have to go in like the producers that we are and line these things up. So let's zoom in a little bit here and find our rhythmic material. We'll go ahead and mute this melody track for now. Let's just hear where the rhythmic stuff starts by soloing the sequenced voice. Alright. So maybe it's somewhere around here. Might have gone a little long on this part. It's okay. Okay, so we know that our note changes there, so that might be a good spot to look for in this recording to kind of hear sort of what's up. So we know that this stuff is probably non-rhythmic, right? So let's listen for that change to that F somewhere around here. I'm thinking it's right around this zone. Right, so you hear that move to that F, similar to what we heard up here. Let's go back and let's find out exactly where that happens. Alright, so we hear that right there. So let's line those things up more or less. And hear how it sounds. Let's listen to that just one more time, find exactly that point. So it looks like I moved to the F right there. So we'll just line up that F there. Should be more or less pretty good. Let's hear what that sounds like together. So I feel like we're in a good place here. Let's go ahead and clip these things down a little bit. There we go. All right. So we can see here that I've gone a little bit over the 2-minute mark here into about 2 minutes and 30 seconds. If this happens to you, don't worry about it too much. As long as it doesn't go, super far and past for 3 minutes. For now, we'll call this okay. Maybe if you're worried about it, set up a little timer while you're recording. I definitely, maybe spent a little more time than I meant to in this arrhythmic section, but for now I think it's okay. So we know that these melody lines were recorded along to the sort of rhythmic section, so we know that they'll be there. So this is kind of the first section we really need to start thinking about. So let's audition or just listen to and see what we like these lines here, and try to get it set up in some kind of order here. I think that this might be right, but who knows? Let's see. Let's unmute this. Okay, so I can hear already that it's a little bit out of time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move this track up so that I can see my rhythm against this sequencer line. So I can see that right here is a downbeat, or sort of the start of my pattern. So let's line up my first note here and listen to that again. So I know that that's a mistake right there, so let's go ahead and take that out. Let's hear that again just to laugh at me. Yeah, I don't really like how that sounds. I think we can just take out that whole phrase. So let's back up a little bit. Yeah, I don't think that this is doing us a lot, so let's cut it out. Actually, let's split here with Control I, and we'll split over here as well. And let's just get rid of this, Who cares about it? Who needs it? Right, and this was that little kind of rhythmic element that we had. So we'll say that this is going to be our main sort of melody here. Let's just listen to that again. And I think that comes in a little bit too early, right? So we kind of have this squirrely stuff. Probably want to have that happen later. Let's move this rhythmic stuff over a little bit. And let's find another place for this melody to start. So let's hear how we get out of that arrhythmic section. So we kind of end up back on that C right around here, so why not? Let's just try it. Sort of our starting note. Let's hear what that sounds like. Now, usually when I'm composing, I would obviously take a lot more time, really thinking about this, but I think for this assignment, it's totally fine to just sort of be playful like this, find some things that mostly go together, are in the same scale, and put them together, see what it sounds like. So let's see what it sounds like. Alright, so that obviously wasn't perfect. Let's find that exact note. So back that up there. Alright, so that feels good to me. Let's find a way to add in this rhythmic section. Let's just listen to what that sounds like again. Okay. So let's see what this is like. Where's our downbeat here? Okay, so I'm just gonna find that downbeat right there and then line these waveforms up. Zoom in real close to make sure it's nice and tight, because this rhythm is a little funky anyway. And let's hear what we got. So I know I want to take this down in volume from where the other thing was, so I'll just bring this down a little bit. Let's hear that again. Okay, great. So here, just where we're at now, we've created a piece that's, maybe a bit too long, but hopefully gives you an idea of how you can sort of assemble some of these patch ideas into a more uniform composition. Now, to go forward with this, I already have some panning material, some stereo information, because those delays were doing different things in different channels. I might want to go through and doctor some of my envelopes, my amplitude envelopes a little bit to really pull out the dynamics. And then, of course, going and adding some effects, manipulation, reverses, whatever you want to do, little things to sort of spice this up. You could definitely go a lot further with it. You could also make some more recordings in VCV Rack. Maybe you wanted to synthesize some drums and have some drum parts come in with the rhythmic material. But for now, I hope this gives you a good idea of a basic overview of kind of how to get started with this East Coast synthesizer project. So let's listen to our total piece as it is so far, and then we'll close it out.